Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Today we're discussing Lavender Brown. If you can't remember who Lavender is, she's in the Harry Potter series from the very beginning. In fact, she's mentioned very early on in the very first book, and her face is first shown in the film adaptation of The Chamber of Secrets. She was a pure-blood witch that started at Hogwarts in the same year as Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and she actually shared a Hogwarts house with the trio, being the very first new Gryffindor of her year. But Brown, Lavender, became the first new Gryffindor, and the table on the far left exploded with cheers. And because they were Gryffindors, Lavender even shared a dormitory with Hermione, among other girls. While spending time at Hogwarts, Lavender was quite studious and took a particular interest in divination. She also had a massive crush on Ron Weasley, loyally supported Professor Trelawney, and joined Dumbledore's army. It's worth noting that while many film-only fans think Lavender was just the girl who dated Ron, her role in the books is more layered. She's shown as sociable, excitable, and occasionally petty, traits that make her feel like a real teenager rather than a flat side character. Her enthusiasm for divination, for example, often sets her apart from Hermione, who dismisses the subject as imprecise. Lavender's faith in Trelawney's predictions even creates tension between the two girls, especially after Trelawney's grim predictions sometimes appear to come true. The 16th of October, that thing you're dreading, will happen on the 16th of October, remember? She was right. The whole class was gathered around Lavender now. Seamus shook his head seriously. Hermione hesitated, then she said, You were dreading Binky being killed by a fox? Well, not necessarily by a fox, said Lavender, looking up at Hermione with streaming eyes, but I was obviously dreading him dying, wasn't I? But Lavender's personality and antics aside for a second, one of the most peculiar aspects of her character is that she's played by 3 different actresses across the films. In The Chamber of Secrets, we see the very first actress to play Lavender Brown, Kathleen Corley. In truth, this early on in the films, Lavender is not a particularly important character. She doesn't really have any dialogue, and she's really just there as a background character. And though she is mentioned in the books, in the films, Lavender was never referred to directly by any of the other characters, at least while Kathleen assumed the role. This early portrayal is so subtle that many fans, even diehard ones, don't remember Lavender being present before Cave takes over in Half-Blood Prince. Corley can be spotted in Great Hall scenes and occasionally in the background of class sequences, but without lines or significant camera focus, it's easy to miss her entirely. After The Chamber of Secrets was released, The Prisoner of Azkaban followed. And while Prisoner of Azkaban immediately followed Chamber of Secrets, Lavender Brown still seemed to be recast. And so, Kathleen Corley was promptly replaced with actress Jennifer Smith. The role of Lavender at this stage was still a non-speaking one, but she did occur quite frequently as a background character in the film. I'm not sure why Corley was replaced. This was around the same time that Alfonso Cuarón took over the films, but I'd imagine that it was just that Corley was not available for the role. It's also worth mentioning that Jennifer Smith has been commonly confused with actress Candace Morris, who plays Keller in The Prisoner of Azkaban. Similar to Corley, after one film, Smith did not appear in any of the films again. At this point, we would see a hiatus for Lavender's character altogether, until 2009 when The Half-Blood Prince was released. At this point, Lavender became a, shocker, speaking character, and was played by none other than actress Jessie Cave. Cave had made her acting debut in the drama Summerhill and beat out 7,000 other girls in the audition for the role of Lavender in the film. In interviews, Cave revealed that part of her audition process involved reading scenes opposite Rupert Grint to test on-screen chemistry. This makes sense as Lavender's entire presence in Half-Blood Prince revolves around her relationship with Ron. From over-the-top public displays of affection to her dramatic jealousy of Hermione, Lavender suddenly becomes a central comedic and romantic subplot. But now you might be asking yourself, why another recast? Why Cave? The reason for this is that by the time the 6th film came out, it was time for Lavender's character to really blossom. She went from background character to front and center, and Warner Brothers decided that they wanted a more established actress in the role. Because the previous portrayals of Lavender were so trivial in comparison, it's likely that they never properly assessed the acting abilities of Corley or Smith. They likely just needed someone to fill Lavender's space. It's also possible that the casting director just assigned the name Lavender Brown to the 2 previous actresses to keep track of the minor roles as the films progressed. Warner Brothers was scrutinized for the casting of Cave, primarily because they replaced 2 black actresses with, ultimately, a white actress. Personally, I don't think that the casting of Cave was a racially driven decision at all, as she was an experienced actress hired for a portrayal of Lavender that required more experience. In the role, Cave ended up being excellent, but I'm not a huge fan of the lack of continuity on Warner Brothers' part. I suppose this can be forgiven on the basis that the films were shot over a 10-year span. One interesting side note is that Cave's portrayal, bubbly, clingy, and overpossessive, has heavily influenced how modern fans remember Lavender, to the point that many forget she was in Dumbledore's army or that she fought in the Battle of Hogwarts. In fact, in the films, her fate is made more final. She appears to die during the battle after Fenrir Greyback attacks her. In the books, however, it's left ambiguous. She's seen moving slightly after being injured, and no explicit confirmation of her death is given. This difference has led to long-running fan debates over whether book Lavender might have survived. And then there's her appearance. Because Jessie Cave has blonde hair, film fans have almost universally assumed that Lavender is canonically blonde. Yet J.K. Rowling never describes her hair color in the books at all. It's entirely ambiguous. This is just another case of a visual adaptation cementing a fact that isn't actually present in the source material. So really, the versions of Lavender Brown played by Corley or Smith may have actually been more accurate depictions. We just don't know. This is quite different from the more recent Papa Asidu Snape casting controversy, where the actor chosen to play Snape does in fact go against his description in the books. In Snape's case, J.K. Rowling gives us several clues that imply his skin tone, describing him as sallow-skinned and greasy-haired with a hooked nose. And while sallow can be open to some interpretation, it generally suggests a pale, slightly yellowish complexion, making a race change casting far more of a deviation from the written description than with Lavender, whose physical appearance is never once described. And that's why, even though both situations spark debates about race swapping and casting, they're not equivalent from a book accuracy standpoint. The absence of Lavender from much of the earlier films also removes other book moments that could have given her more depth, such as her grief of the death of her pet rabbit, Binky, which she believed had been foretold by Trelawney's prediction. Small details like this fleshed out her personality and helped explain her loyalty to Trelawney in Prisoner of Azkaban and beyond. And without them, film Lavender can come off as a one-dimensional, clingy girlfriend-type character, which doesn't entirely do her justice. I mean, she's not my favourite character, but there's a bit more to her than the films give us. Anyway, I hope that answers the question of why Lavender Brown was played by 3 different actresses. Maybe you never noticed or even realised that Lavender was a character before the Half-Blood Prince. Well, now you know. What do you all think? Did you ever notice this? Let me know in the comment section down below. Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live.